Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world. This is part 2 of this episode. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Link in the description.
Okay, back for part 2. The end of part 1, we were just talking about kind of the future of the business and Wagonex and stuff. So anyone who hasn't listened to that, please go back and check that out. And the whole journey and everything that sort of got you to where you are. But I'm curious about something you said earlier that really stuck with me, which is you mentioned that your partner, your wife, is also an entrepreneur and a founder. That your mother and your father were an entrepreneur. Like, it's in your blood, like, basically, and it's very much seems to be surrounded by that. How integral is that, do you think, to maybe your joint success, in inverted in quote success, because I know that's measured in various degrees, but how integral has that been, do you think, to being able to get you to where you are, by especially having a partner that understands a large part, I assume, of what you're going through, and like you said, is very much a shoulder to cry on, I imagine, at times, and maybe a cheerleader and everything else. Like, is that really, do you think that's quite crucial? Because and also I should caveat, the reason why I'm asking is I know a lot of people that are obviously founders that don't have a partner that understands this world at all. And I think that, that has various effects on you. So just speak more on that. That'd be interesting to hear your perception of that.
I can't speak for many other people, although I do know founders that have found it really difficult where the other halves haven't really quite understood the challenges and the difficulties and the burdens that come with it. I mean, Anna and I have always been the same. We've always been self-employed. I think it can't not have been helpful. We were actually going through 2 years ago major funding rounds at the same time, and we're now raising money again at the same time, and we actually help one another. We don't actually really have a lot of time to sit down and talk to one another about each other's businesses, but we have that sort of we've learned by osmosis of what the other one is doing or what's going on at the moment. And obviously she knows by my demeanour, and I know by her demeanour of what's going on, whether things are good, whether things are bad. We have started more and more over the last 6 months being a sounding board to one another. So I think it can't not have been helpful. It's not overly helpful with the stress levels.
Right.
I think that...
That's her now, isn't it?
No, sorry about that.
Stop talking about me. They always know.
I'm very sorry about that.
That's fine.
But I think we have two entrepreneurs and 3 children, and I seem to have created the exact same environment that I grew up in, which was 2 entrepreneurs and 3 children. My mum supported my father in building his business, and then she left and set up her own business, which was very successful. It was a health food business. She had a health food shop on a corner by a train station. It's called Nature Calls, believe it or not. And the only reason why it closed down was because the block where the shop was on the corner of a block, and they demolished the block and didn't ever replace the shop. So it sort of died with that, which was quite a shame. But yeah, I guess it could well have rubbed off on me, because that seems to have been the path I've led for the last 25 years. Probably wouldn't have it any other way. I don't know what life is going to look like after Wagonex. Anna's business, ELV Denim, is going from strength to strength.
What's her business name?
Sorry, it's ELV Denim. It's a sustainable denim brand.
Right.
They repurpose huge amounts of denim that are set for landfill and turn them into beautiful high fashion items. And they have a direct to consumer website. They 50% of their business is wholesale, so they supply some of the big e-commerce websites and a lot of boutiques in the US and the UK. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen if both the businesses kick on in the way that we both like them to. So I think that's something we need to be mindful of. I think from what I've seen that our children have seen of the amount of work we've had to put in the businesses and the levels of stress and strain caused, I think I wouldn't be surprised if not one of them became an entrepreneur, and they both got proper qualifications, proper jobs, and stuck to those for 30, 40 years, given what they've seen their parents having to go through.
Well, you say that, but you saw it in your parents and you still did it. So
yeah, I don't know. It's quite different. I mean, we've, in the days that my parents did it, I don't know how they managed to fund them, but I know they didn't take any external investment for either business. I think one of them was profitable from day one. In fact, Anna's business was profitable from day one, and she then tried to raise money a couple of years ago to scale the business, which seems to have worked reasonably nicely. Obviously, the challenges in the world around us at the moment, this year's been a struggle for everyone, I think. Yeah, I don't think, I know that they didn't go through the sort of investment route, external investment into the business to try to scale in talking to VCs and
well, it was a different world, presumably at that point, right? And I'm assuming their businesses were they tech businesses? I'm assuming not, right?
No.
Well, you mentioned your mum's business was a brick and mortar shop anyway. So
my father's a chartered accountant and set up a practice, grew the customer base.
Oh, yeah, of course you mentioned that. Yeah,
took a specialism in authors, writers, screenwriters, and actors, and things like that. So
so different worlds, right?
Different. One thing I remember when I was growing up was he had a client that was totally random and wasn't his normal client base, but he got a client who was a major global rock star. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. How on earth did you manage to land him as a client? And he stayed with him for 10 years or something. So, I think there was potentially some glamour, but he's a chartered accountant, grew the business and sold it to another chartered accountancy practice. So it's a very sort of, I guess, old school standard way of getting a qualification, building a business, selling a business.
But it's interesting because my father he had his own business too, and my mother at one point for a large stretch of time too. But yeah, my father had a building company, and grew pretty large. It served the whole of Europe at one point.
Wow.
And had huge contracting work all over the place. And this was when my mum and dad were together. And my mum helped with sort of admin and the finances and stuff with him. And then later she spun up her own little business, doing teaching and so on. So, but it's interesting because these are very blue collar type businesses, right? And there seems to be a theme in some of the people that I meet and the entrepreneurs that I meet that if they have entrepreneurialism in their family, it's usually that kind of entrepreneurialism. And it seems to then spawn the sort of the startup founder entrepreneur. And then, like you said, I have a feeling that the kids are going to look at all of that and just go, fuck that.
I know.
So maybe it's a cyclical thing, and then maybe their kids will look at it and go, do you know what, I want to start my own shop. And then it just
be like grandpa.
Yeah, the cycle starts all over again,
Yeah.
Poor kids.
Yeah, who knows? I'm really interested to see what happens.
But your kids are all like older now. That you said you got a 17-year-old, 14-year-old,
17, 14, and 8. And
right. Okay.
I didn't go to university, and I tried to keep it quiet from the kids. But obviously, so Dad, where did you go to university? Oh, no, actually didn't.
We're out of cornflakes.
It wasn't, and not because I'm embarrassed about not going to university. It's because I don't want them to then say, "Oh, well, Daddy didn't go to university, so I'm not going to bother." So it's a case of, look, okay, Mummy went to university, in a very good university. Daddy didn't. So these are the choices that you have. But I think.
Well, they know now.
I mean, when you there are a lot of companies that I think look at CVs and see a degree as almost a threshold. You have to have a degree, or we're not going to look at the CV. I try and I've looked at all the CVs and hired in a way that I don't really look at. I don't look at the qualifications. What I want to see is that there's been a focus on something that's either entrepreneurial or that has taken a significant amount of dedication and effort outside of what they do within their career. So if someone's done an Iron Man outside of business, that shows outside of work. Hopefully they didn't do it inside work. It takes a year, 18 months of total dedication, week after week after week, to be able to focus on something, to be able to deliver that. If a lady has taken time out of work to raise a family of three and then is coming back into the working environment, that's a huge amount of time, dedication, and effort that's gone to starting a family, raising a family, and then coming back into the working environment. I think that is a formidable achievement, and I would, and I have done. I've hired somebody who had previously had experience in automotive leasing, a family of four, and wanted to come back to work. So absolutely brilliant. And she's one of our superstars.
See, I'm more interested in the result. You see, I'd be like, well, where did you come in the Ironman? And also let me meet those kids, because if those kids are horrible, then no, I'm joking.
That's a very good point.
yeah. If those three kids are little shits, then maybe we don't hire you. But couldn't you make the same argument? Could you make the same argument though about a degree? Like, because I mean that, because I've always seen it now. I've sort of changed my position on this a little bit, not in the sense that I now look at a degree as like the holy grail of whether or not to hire someone, but I the appreciation for it. Because if I like you, I didn't go to university, but I did later on, and I did distance learning. I decided to go through the Open University, and it was only then really did I fall back in love with academia, because I, like you, awful at school, didn't get on with it at all, had a problem with authority and a lot of other stuff which I won't go into. I've gone into it on other podcasts, which
I'll have to look it up.
Which again seems to be a theme with a lot of entrepreneurs I speak with, but then fell back in love with academia as an adult, and the love for learning and all of that on my own terms, at least. But so I think I had a newfound appreciation then for what it takes actually to do a degree, or at least to get a good result from a degree. And while it may not have any significant bearing from the information they've learned, it does show, like you say, that ability to stick with something, to work hard at something. So could you not, do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't look at a CV where someone has a degree and hasn't done anything outside of work. It's not discounted.
Right. I suppose it depends on the degree itself as well, though. Exactly. I'd just like to have a very broad view on people's experience, and I don't like seeing. I don't want to see degrees as a default. But I know that companies do. So I mean, the way the conversation started was the point that I don't want my son to see me or use me as an example and say, "Well, Dad didn't go to university. I'm not going to go to university." Because I want him to think about it in a way that I don't think I did. And he's far more conscientious than I was at school. And I think there is an element of a dislike of authority, which I think is probably standard for all teenagers. But I don't think it was anywhere near the level that I struggled with. He's a good kid. I think I was a good kid. I think you could just have a disdain for authority and still be a good kid. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah.
I think there's more of a healthy disdain for authority with my son.
Right.
Than maybe I might have had.
Yeah. I think having a healthy disdain of authority is important in a way. Especially in this day.
I mean, we now have a great team of 18 people, and there are several with degrees and several without degrees. We have a competition bodybuilder. We have a Ironman, a half Ironman. I mean, I do all kinds of different ridiculous events. And there are about 7 of us that are going to try and get ourselves around the Cardiff Half Marathon, which is on the 5th of October. We'll try to show our hand, although
sounds like you're assembling the Avengers, not a company.
Yeah. Although I'm 10 years older than at least 10 years older than my closest in age in the business. So that's my excuse if they all beat me.
Yeah, that's a good excuse. Yeah, but I suppose it also depends on what position you're hiring for, right? Because and also as the founder and CEO, you're more likely to be hiring, especially sort of at later stages in the business, for more senior positions. So you're going to be seeing CVs with more job experience, work experience, etc. So you probably have that. But if you're hiring for far more junior positions, which, let's face it, later on a CEO is unlikely to be doing. It is your staff, your team that's going to be doing that. Then they'll probably be looking at CVs that don't have that work experience or very little of it. And then I suppose that's when the qualifications become more, they carry more weight, right? To some extent.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the more I'm not involved, I would imagine the way we hire is going to evolve, particularly, delegating that authority down along to some of the guys in the business, which we've already seen. A number of our team have been interviewed and pretty much hired before I get involved. I like coming and having a chat, just to meeting them before we make the final decision. Wheeled in for a cup of tea and a biscuit and wheeled out as quickly as they possibly can.
Right. That's what happens.
Hiring's not easy. We've had all kinds of, we've made our fair share of mistakes. We've got one particular role that we keep having a bit of a stinker with, which I won't go into too many details on. One I will share from some years ago now, where we had an insurance and accounts and insurance associate to support our accountant and support our operations team with some of the insurance side of things. And she interviewed well, and she was coming back from starting a family, and she was going through her qualifications, and it was quite a junior role. Then a year in, and it was a startup, obviously, really, really no processes. It was a case of, we need to come in with your expertise. We've got so and so working on the accounts here. We need to look at these different processes. We need to build things around some insurance provisions and reporting on the insurance, reporting on the accounts, and can you help with doing this? And she wrestled through it for about a year. And then she handed in her notice, and she said something along the lines of, I'm going to a job where they have processes because I don't like creating processes. I don't really like doing accounts, and I don't know anything about insurance. So I was like, how on earth did we manage that? We hired somebody for accounts and insurance that didn't know anything about accounts so didn't like accounts and didn't know anything about insurance.
And hated the startup.
And hated the startup environment and the lack of structure and processes. Like, how do we manage that? And how? And it was around COVID, so it was all the way through COVID. So it was a case of, went from an office environment to fully remote, didn't see anyone in person for 6 months. And if you're in an office as a startup with somebody like that, you get found out straight away. It's such an open environment where people get found out really quickly.
Yeah, of course.
But with everything being remote and during COVID, it took us a year to find out, and it was.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean that really puts a spotlight on one of the hidden issues with working in a remote environment, right? Because I'm a big proponent of distributed workforces, and I think it can be really beneficial to a lot of businesses, but there are some drawbacks, and that is one, that dissatisfaction and incompetency, which quite often goes together, can massively slide under the radar, and it can be missed.
Yeah, I mean, we've always been remote, so we've tried to we've tried to make sure we've got umpteen channels on Slack where everyone keeps communicating. Less so now because we're in the office.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
Minimum once a week. Some people are in there 2-3 times a week, and we try and have team meetings on a Friday and a very structured calendar just to make sure everyone sees one another and we all manage to go through. I mean, you don't need me to tell you about that, but but you would think that we were experienced enough to be able to spot things like that really quickly, and COVID just seemed to
just throw everyone into
a slight disarray for however long, 3 to 6 months. But we, at the start of COVID, actually, we default action was to put everyone on furlough, but we actually managed to close an investment round on the 9th of April 2020, which was completely against the grain of everything that was going on in the world. They gave us a bit of a time for 2 weeks of furlough. We were sort of thinking, actually, we don't really need to be on furlough. We could come back and think about how we can restructure the platform to be focused on SaaS. So the first day after the 3 weeks, we got everyone back off furlough, and we were able to rebuild the platform, as I said, into a white label business, focusing on SaaS, and haven't ever looked back. So actually that period of lockdown, the car industry just completely disappeared for 3-4 months, and it came back and everyone had defaulted back to BAU and not looking at anything innovative. So it was a very fortuitous luck. It was, could that investor have said no? I don't really think that's a sensible thing to do, given that the world's gone into lockdown. Absolutely, but he backed his convictions and us, and we wouldn't exist today, arguably, if he hadn't done that.
You weathered the storm.
Well, I mean, I think we would have found a way, and we wouldn't. Maybe we would have probably stayed on furlough for longer and done things slightly differently. But
sure,
interesting times.
Yeah. And on the subject of team, you don't have any co-founders, is that correct?
No.
Yeah. So was that a conscious choice, or was it the case that you never came across anyone that appealed? Because a lot of advice that you hear is always get a co-founder, right? That's constantly shoved down everyone's throat. Clearly not always the case.
Some funds won't back a single founder. It's in their clearly in their investment mandate.
Yeah.
If or when I do this again, I won't do it by myself.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's tough. It's having someone to bounce ideas off and share the burden, and the amount of times I've worked until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, day in, day out, week in, week out, it's unsustainable. I'm not really quite sure how I've managed to do so much over the years. I guess a supportive wife is probably quite helpful. Not coming to bed until 2 or 3 in the morning, week after week after week. So I guess going back to one of your earlier questions, it probably is fortuitous and support, and having that support and able to keep going.
It's the understanding of it, right? That's the important thing. Not to make you feel guilty for doing it, but the understanding of why you're doing it. That not only you're passionate about it, but that of course it's for the family, right? That,
Yeah, absolutely. And I did back in 2016, before I found the venture building company, where you have you have access to the CTO all the way down to testing through product, through engineering, through QA. I met with a number of potential CTO co-founders, because that was obviously the mantra at the time: find yourself a technical co-founder. So, technical co-founder. So I met, whether you want to call it the CTO speed dating game, which sounds really weird, and meeting with very senior engineers in coffee shops and bars in central London was quite something. It was an experience, and it's widely recognised that engineers have quite a potentially different personality or different focus or different mindset to that of a ambitious, vision-driven founder.
Right, sort of commercially minded.
And I mean, our CTO now is phenomenally commercially minded. I think we're extremely lucky to have Leon with the business. But one of the things I noticed, being a investment director at a funding platform, was where the most common difficult conversations and when businesses got into trouble was the technical founder and the founder didn't get on, and there was a massive fallout. The founder would come to us: I need to restructure this to remove the CTO or raise investment to buy him out of the business. And it's always a really difficult conversation and a very negative approach to take to any incoming investor. But we built this platform and I need to get rid of the CTO. Can you put some money in? So
doesn't inspire really confidence.
So no, absolutely not.
Is that what? So was it a pretty conscious decision not to go that route because of that experience? Absolutely. Then, right.
Absolutely. And it was a case of I don't really want to. You're giving 25 to 50% of the company away to somebody you don't know, and you don't really necessarily you're not the same, or you see things very differently, or it's quite difficult to become compatible overnight with someone you've only just met. And I met with the venture building company a number of times, and I met with the three co-founders. One of them was a CTO, and they were in the early stages of starting up their venture building company. So, and they were partnered with an overseas engineering team. So they understood what I was going through. I kind of understood what they were going through. And I think they were a year in, maybe 18 months in. So we've seen them grow over the last 8 years. And it was a case of, I wouldn't have been able to hire even a part-time full stack engineering team in the UK for the deal that we struck with these guys, and they were our full engineering team until for 5 or 6 years, and we had our CTO who managed them for a year, so they were fully outsourced for 4.5 years, 5 years. And then we've gradually, Leon joined us as CTO first, and then we built the team internally, and we now have a fully in-house team. And if we've got some big pieces of work coming in, we turn up the dials with those guys as and where we need to.
How did you know when it was the right decision to do that? Because that's a really interesting thing. I don't get to ask many founders, actually, because they haven't got to that stage. But when do you know the time is right to start bringing in and building that tech team internally? Or did you just rely entirely on your CTOs?
So a CTO, the type of remuneration that a CTO commands can be astonishing. For an early stage business, having someone like that on your payroll is a very big burden. So we worked with Leon on a consultancy basis. So we had the outsourced engineering team. Leon came in, did a day a week for us. He got to know the team and understood how they worked, and we got it to a point where it was probably money and investment that was the trigger point to then start hiring a team internally. And we did it systematically. It was almost got to the point where we adjusted our processes that were slightly differently to the way that venture builder works. And it was almost a one in, one out, very gradual switch across. And it was about one of the best things we've done.
That's how we have things set up. We've got a fractional CTO, outsourced dev team, and I have no doubt, as we're looking at the financial planning, that's broadly what we're looking at doing, right? Similar kind of thing. Increase the hours across the board, and then start bringing in.
Exactly. I mean, and me saying it was the best thing we've ever done sounds as though it's detrimental towards the outsourced team, but it's a case of, with an outsourced team, they have a certain number. It's a certain number of hours. They're not intrinsically bought into your journey necessarily. Right. They're not part of the EMI scheme. Things need to be done over the weekend. One or two of them jumped in from time to time, but once you've got that in-house team, you've got the camaraderie. You know what you're working towards. You've got the vision of the business, the goals of the business. Everyone is on the EMI scheme, and every year we bolster that.
Yeah, and you know that they're context switching all the time between different projects, right? So there's probably a cost inefficiency there to an extent, which means there's time taken to sort of get back up to speed on something versus going to nothing. Whereas if you've just got those dedicated to it, it's full steam ahead.
I mean, the number of heads is the same, but the velocity is far greater. And our product manager is awesome. He's done this several times before, and actually so is our CTO. So it's a very lean and efficiently run team. I think they very much punch above their weight, and the business seems to have always punched above its weight. That's good. Very pleased with how things are working at the moment. We're flying through the product roadmap and the backlog, which seemed to be never ending over the years, and we didn't really ever have much control over. Not much control. We couldn't ever really see how we were going to deliver all the things we wanted to deliver, and now obviously now product manager owns the product. He's taken that ownership away from me to a large extent, which is great, and he's absorbed the vision and we have a clear defined plan this year and next year, so it's awesome. And every now and again things jump in, obviously, as you would expect. Some really super urgent projects that may or may not be super urgent, dependent on your perspective, but
Right.
we typically stick to the roadmap as best we can.
It sounds like you're at a very a crucial sort of almost tipping point in the business with some of the things, like you said, your responsibilities and your role changing now, and the team really sort of picking more of those up. And then, like you said, you are you still in the are you still raising at the moment? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's always going to be
Series
the case.
A, right?
It's more of I guess it's a pre-Series A. We're
Right.
very close to being able to command a Series A, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's a pretty important stage for the business then, by the sounds of it. And are you expecting, once this round is closed, for a significant amount of change to take place? Is it going to be a quite a large, hiring frenzy? Have you got, sort of a lot of plans to allocate those funds and shift the structure of the business?
No.
Okay.
So that's not fair. That's a very so.
Oh, that's it, right? Well, thanks very much. It's been lovely speaking with you.
I'm just going to put the phone down. I've got something better to. No, I need to go and look after the dog. No, I don't see anything really dramatically changing in terms of the direction we're moving. We very much need to focus on consolidating the partnerships that we have. Some of them have the potential to. I don't want to become. I've always tried to fight from becoming the engineering team for one of our partners. So it's being able to not necessarily move quickly and break things. It's expanding the team to a point where, as our partners grow, we can grow with them. And my role, as you mentioned just a second ago, within the business has changed and evolved. And I think that's one of the hardest things I've found personally to come to terms with, is my identity within the business.
Why is that?
Where you are, when you first found a business, it's 100% you. You are product owner, you're vision owner, you're mission owner, you own the fundraising process, you own the relationship with the outsource engineering team, you're everything. And then you systematically hire people in to be better than you at certain parts of the business. So product manager, awesome, absolutely brilliant product manager. Hold on, I'm product owner. It's my product. I've been doing this for years. But now I've hired this guy in to take that away from me. But I just want to have a look at that. I just want to be in that conversation. I just want to find out what's going on over there and what you're doing here. So it's just giving him the space to do the things and be as good as we think he is, and the reason why we've hired him, and me's taking a step back. So if I'm not product owner, what am I? Oh, I'm operations, and I just need to make sure I know what's going on in operations all the time. Actually, we've got a COO, and she's brilliant. Well, I don't need to be involved there. And we've got a head of finance who's now numerous financial models, and we've raised millions of investment on some of those models. But we now have a head of finance who's a massive Excel geek. He's absolutely brilliant. He's our CFO in waiting. Right. So I need to actually be a proper CEO. So how do I be a proper CEO? What is my role within the business? Am I just now foreman or puppet master? Or that's not fair. Why would I call myself that? It's all these different thoughts that go around your head. So I'm now 100% focused on fundraising. So when I've closed this round and I come back into business, I'm not going to be meddling in operations or product or insurance or so what am I? Head of business development, and that just growing up to be the CEO, who is my vision or my view of that is, we've got a brilliant senior leadership team that can now run the business practically without me, and I do need to now potentially become almost the sounding board for all of them. Keep them in the direction that we need to be heading. Obviously, give them the freedom to make decisions and delegate that decision-making process, which is, again, quite difficult learning. And we've got some really exciting things happening overseas, which I think is probably going to be my focus next year. Some major things happening in the UK that I will absolutely be getting involved with from a strategic level. So, I mean, I almost see myself as becoming chairman one day. But yeah, like I said, we've got a huge amount to do at the moment.
So there's still plenty to get your teeth sunk into by the sounds of it. But I can totally see how that might be uncomfortable, right? Going back to that word. But but absolutely, and you know, you wouldn't be the first person I've talked to that has gone or was going through that or has gone through that. And it is something that isn't talked about often at all. That sort of
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it must be quite painful to an extent, right? That there are certain parts of the business that you're having to let go of, and that you kind of be in slight mourning of that to an extent, right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, this is my baby, that I did this, like, you know, and there must be a fear that someone's gonna fuck it all up, and although, like you said, you know, you have hired amazing people, so I'm sure that fear is somewhat you know, it's quelled, but still it must be there to an extent, right? Because if anything can happen.
But we've hired. I've tried to create an environment where it's okay to break things. It's okay to make mistakes as long as we learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily moving fast and breaking things. We're human. We don't know everything. Just don't cover them up and come to us front and center. If it's a mistake, it's a mistake.
Yeah,
we just
absolutely.
need to work out how to change processes, not make that mistake again, or you know, go. It's important that we do make mistakes so that we're not making mistakes with some of these major partners that we have further down the line. It's the same as, you know, I talked about it a number of months ago. We've got, you know, 17-year-old now. He's taking driving lessons. He's been going to see his mates on the train for years, and they're going out to parties and things like that. You have to start letting him go. I have a 14-year-old daughter who's fierce. So, I mean, I feel deeply terrified for all of, or whatever her love interests might be over the years, because she's so ridiculously formidable. So you have to try and, you know, you have to let parts of your business go. You have to let parts of your family go and do their own thing. And
everything changes.
It's all part of the same thing. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Change is a constant, right? You have to roll with it. You can't keep holding on to things. It's not healthy for the things you're holding on to or yourself, right? Yeah. But but I'm just glad you brought that up and you were sort of as transparent about that as you were, because I think it's really important for people to hear that it's, you know, you can spend so many years building something and then you can get to a certain level of comfort as to what that is. And I've seen, as I'm sure you have, plenty of people not really accept it particularly well, and that results in a pretty poor culture, you know, of you know, people feeling like they're being micromanaged or constantly under microscope, and that's not the route to go down either. So and nor is going the complete opposite way and going, well, fuck it, I'll be at the resort if you need me, guys. You know what I mean? Like I've seen it go that way too, of like, oh, finally, you know, I'm free, and you can never find the CEO, you know. So it's a fine balancing act, I suppose, to play. But you mentioned earlier as well that if you were to do this again, you would probably you would most likely get a co-founder. Like, do you see yourself ever doing something like this again? I mean, let's say tomorrow, like you were given an offer that you couldn't refuse, and you were like, okay, right, you know, thank you very much for the lovely memories of Wagonex, but it's time to move on. Do you see yourself ever doing anything like this again?
I think it depends on the day that you ask me, I suppose.
Right. Okay.
We've had some particularly challenging moments over the last year, driven by inexperience of very, very arguably powerful people.
Right.
If you'd asked me that question, well, I don't know. If you asked me that question, God, no, I wouldn't want to do it again by myself. But then, you know, time is a great healer, and I hate some of the cliched sayings, but it does things like that. Difficult times get easier over time. You know, you've seen countless founders, I'm sure, whose businesses haven't quite got to the point where they wanted them to. They've taken some time out, gone away, done some thinking, and come back harder, stronger, better, more efficient, more knowledgeable than they were for the first business that they tried. They didn't quite get to where they wanted it to get to, and they do a better job in their second business. So I think that learning and the level of resilience increases every time you do it. I've had to go through difficult journeys, different pathways. I think this is probably a third or fourth different pathway for me. I think the business has got some great opportunities in front of it if we can get past some challenges in front of us now. And yes, I would do it again. I'd do something again, potentially with a co-founder. There are some ideas flying around in my head of things I've seen in this industry that I know are opportunities. Talked to a couple of people about the world of venture capital. Would I get involved with that? Don't know. I don't want to stop. I don't want to retire. Yeah, like I said earlier, my father's still working at 78, and I don't see my life being any different. Though my wife has probably got a very different view on that.
That is quite a common path, though, isn't it, for exited founders to look into VC or founder tech, right, as like their next thing to solve a problem that they've found on their journey as a founder, which is interesting. But I spoke with did a screener call for this podcast with a 3 times exited founder the other day, and I asked him in that conversation, like, so does it get easier? And it's like, no. I thought it would, but it's hard. If anything, it's harder. It was like, he was like, I thought because I had the contacts, for from previous raising investment, and because I had the contacts in the industry and this, that, and the other, it would be a breeze. And it was like, if anything, it seems to be getting bloody harder, Greg. And I was like, oh, good, that's reassuring.
That is it is reassuring in a way. I think particularly this year with raising money, starting a business this year. I mean, unless it's got some form of AI, or at least can demonstrate it's on the path to having some form of AI or machine learning.
I'm glad you said that, because that's what I'm doing, and it does have AI as part of it. So that's made me feel better.
So I think a number of VCs are more family offices than VCs at the moment, where it's have you got any interest in AI? Do you have an AI roadmap? Yeah, of course. Well, we've got any startup at the moment is likely to have an AI roadmap. Have we started delivering it? No. So last year, obviously, the valuations tumbling from sort of low to mid 20 times multiples in 2022 down to somewhere between 4 and 7, possibly 8, depending on what you do. I think the average at the moment for a B2B SaaS business is 7.5 to 8 times multiple on revenue multiple, so 3 times lower than it was a few years ago. Interest rate environment's not helping. We've been talking about the Euros, the Olympics, the election over here and over in the States. War. I think risk capital, just looking at the data, would show that it has deteriorated by quite a high percentage. I think 60 to 70% year on year is what people are saying. Now, there is a chance that if the capital gains tax regime changes in the UK, they might make early stage investments look more appealing to those that have capital tied up in investments that are likely to suffer from a capital gains side of things. But I don't know. The budget's in October, and we've been told it's going to be harsh. So goodness only knows what that's going to look like. I know there's been a big exodus of high net worths to more tax efficient lands, so that can't have helped things either. So I don't want to go into too much doom and gloom.
No, but
fundraising has always been difficult. Like I said, right. we're 8 years in,
and it should
6
be.
rounds.
Like, you're asking someone for money. It's
completely agree.
It's not meant to be easy. Otherwise every idiot would do it, right?
One of the most important things, one of the most important lessons I was given by the same chap that said, "What's your path to profitability? What's your exit?" Is make sure you keep your investors up to date with what you're doing. The worst thing you can do is raise money, go and play with the money, or go and do what you need to do with the money for 2 or 3 years, and come back in year 2 or year 3 with cap in hand saying, "We need more money."
Right.
These investors are investing in you, your journey, your vision, and probably more importantly, you. So in the days where we first started raising money, there was a lot of talk around, people want to make investments and talk about them at dinner parties. So they want to be able to give an update on what you're doing. So, okay. So every month I started giving shareholder reports, just updates every month. And then obviously that became a little bit burdensome with the business getting busier and busier, and we had an institution join the cap table in August 2019 in the Investment Bank of Wales, so our corporate governance went through the roof, our board reporting went through the roof, so shareholder updates went stretched to 2 months, and then we had a FTSE 100 business come to to the cap table. So monthly reporting went through the roof in terms of how much information we share. So shareholder updates went to quarterly, but I still try to make a point of making sure that they're on time, so that we are.
They're still there. That's the important
Because you never quite know what might be around the corner. There might be another difficult time of the business, and the last thing you want to do is be going to your shareholders cap in hand, and they don't know anything about what you've been doing, what the business, what's exciting about the business.
Yeah, they need the context, right?
Yeah, without question.
Yeah. And that was the last thing I wanted to touch on, actually, is I remember when we first met, you'd mentioned that you'd either been just started or you'd explored a little in a way as an angel investor. Is that right? Did I remember that right? So is that a fairly recent thing or?
No, that was a long time ago. I started doing that 2010, 2011, something along those lines. Around the time where I was leaving trading, moving into what was after the Sports Social Network, and it was just and I joined the EIS platform as consulting investment director. It was just sort of trying to understand EIS, trying to understand how to invest in companies. We'd understand more of it from a personal perspective, because we'd obviously raised money for the Sports Social Network, and I'd found out what the advanced assurance was and how we'd go about doing that, and the tax efficient investment scheme, which is phenomenal for early stage businesses, but because it's seen as state aid, you can't advertise it. So you only really know it's one of the best kept secrets or the worst kept secrets, or one of the things that we should be shouting about as a nation, because it's not available in anywhere else. So we started looking at that and just backed a couple of companies, and then when you start your own business, it becomes really difficult to invest in others. So it's been something I've watched for a number of years. Some of them have worked. Well, there haven't been many. We've had some have been good, some have been terrible.
Yeah, well, that's what you would expect, right? So it's very much taken a backseat then since Wagonex.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's something. I think it's something that I go back to if, dependent on where things go with Wagonex, depending on where things go with life and our career and what we may or may not do, where both these businesses go, really.
Fair enough.
Well, it's something I enjoy. I mean, and actually, getting to a point where I can help other founders, try and navigate some of the things that we've navigated is something I'd very much like to do. I think I've got my work cut out for me at the moment, but it's something I'd really like to do in the future.
Well, I think having conversations like this with people like me contributes to that, right? Just sharing your journey and your thoughts as they come to you and things like that. That I think is helpful. Just knowing that there are people out there doing what you're doing, and just having these more unfiltered conversations, I think is helpful for people to know what it's really like. It's inspiring.
There are so many stories. I mean, there are a number of things that I've had to be very disciplined to not share today, and there are things that I happily share over a beer or two.
Right.
Some of the more ridiculous conversations and stories and things that we've had to get over. Those learnings are invaluable for anyone starting a new business. I'd like to be able to get to a point where I can potentially chair a couple of boards. I think I'd be quite good at doing that. I mean, I've had to chair our board for the last. Well, we had a chairman for a year or so. I've chaired it for the best part of 8 years anyway. So I'd like to have a bit more board experience. I mean, some of the things that we've seen in the world of investment, it's the 18 months at a funding platform. It's a real eye-opener, just the murky world of fundraising.
But it's interesting because I remember we talked about this before months ago about how there's a lot in this environment, in this ecosystem that isn't talked about because of the concern for damaging relationships, breaking NDAs, getting sued or whatever. But it does mean that there's a lot missing contextually for people getting into this space. And I don't know if it was you I mentioned this with or someone else, but I had this idea, or someone gave me the idea, I can't remember exactly, but to do a like another mini series where I basically anonymize founders and they can just tell me their horror stories. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's completely anonymized. And I think that would be, that could be quite interesting. And I do have a guest coming up soon, actually, that is able to talk about the horror story of his exit. And that's only because it's gone to court, which means it's now public, so he can talk about it. And he very much wants to share that story, to talk about some of the things to look out for and so on. And so there are ways of getting it out there, but that's a rare edge case, Yeah,
no, we did talk about that, and I very much I would have considerable amount of things to contribute to said anonymous podcast.
Okay, well maybe it's something I'll think about doing. At some point in the future, but I'll have to leave it because otherwise it'll be too obvious, right? If it starts like next week, like the week after this comes out, it'll be a bit obvious that it's you. But like doing like they do in documentaries. Do you know what I mean? Like just a black figure or just an image on the screen, and then digitized voice. Yeah, exactly. Like all of that stuff. Now it'd probably be easier than ever. Just use some AI, right, and just job done. But I think that would be cool. I might do that. Yeah. Because
I think it'd be very interesting to do that. And I think you may have more content than you bargained for if it was anonymous.
I know I would, because the conversations I have with people before I hit record and after versus like, you know what I mean, once it's recording or when I meet people down the pub or whatever, we all know that like they're very, very different. So I just feel like people are being
things where some of the stories are so ridiculous. We've had countless conversations internally. Other businesses can't have this happening, and it wouldn't happen. Surely it can't be every early stage company this happens to. And the amount of similar stories you hear when you're in the pub or having a cup of coffee or in unrecorded conversations, that there are so many similarities across multiple verticals, different investors, different structures, different this, that, and the other. But
there's some wild stuff out there.
There are some very, very underhand and murky things that go on. I think I'm going to have to stop because I'm going to start sharing.
Well, that's all right, because we've come to the end.
And another thing.
I'll stop you before you lose control. That's it. We've managed to reach the end unscathed, I think. I don't think you said anything that's going to get you in trouble, so you're okay. At least not with your investors. Maybe your wife or something. I don't know.
She's cool.
And you know what? I'd love to get your wife on. She shares the same name as my wife, so immediately she makes her awesome as well. And she's a founder. So if she's ever interested in coming on the show, I'd love to hear about her business. And sustainable startups are always massively interesting. But listen, it's been awesome having you on, and I really appreciate your candor and you being so generous with your time. Where should people go to check you out and Wagonex out? I'll obviously put all the links down below, but is there anywhere you want to guide people to?
Yeah, look, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and you don't often get the chance to chat for a couple of hours like this, so it's very nice. Wagonex.com is where you'll find us from a consumer-facing perspective. There's a partner page there too for anyone who might be interested in our B2B SaaS product. And I'm on LinkedIn too, so very happy to connect with anyone who would like to hear some interesting stories off the record.
Brilliant. Awesome. So I'll pop those links down below so people can check you out, give you a follow and so on. And I really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much, because I know you're extraordinarily busy, so taking the time to do this is really, really appreciated. But I'm sure we'll be catching up again very soon at an event, sharing some war stories, and I may be getting in touch when I decide to do that anonymous series.
Please do.
All right. Awesome. Have a good day. And speak again soon.
Thanks, Greg.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Please like and subscribe. Or if you are listening via podcasting service and want to show your support, consider rating or leaving a review. It really helps. See you next week.